myself this morning, or this afternoon technically. Gary is not able to be with us due to some scheduling issues, and just basically the movies that we are reviewing today, he didn't have an opportunity to watch. So that is perfectly fine. At times we will do this. There may be times he may see a movie that I can't, and he'll jump on here and give you guys a review, and we are totally good and great with that. And so we're going to jump right into some of this, just to let you guys know, to kind of help us keep on track as you guys who have watched us from the beginning, maybe seen from our first episode. One thing we really wanted to do was to be able to be a channel where we are giving you a good Christian perspective, pastor perspective, dad perspective on movies, for those who are movie lovers or Christians or whatever it may be. And we really want to be able to stay on track with that. So starting today, we are instilling a new method of reviewing. And yes, we're keeping the Hail Marys. Those are going nowhere. But to help us stay focused and be able to give the reviews that we want to give, we're going to start giving you guys reviews based on the good, the bad, the pastor, and the dad. And that's what we're going to be doing for now on with our reviews. So that way we can hit on our normal thoughts and normal reviews, but we also get the pastor perspective and the dad perspective, what you'd expect as a father or a parent with your kids with certain movies that we will be talking about. And so we are excited to be ushering this in, not only to help us stay focused, because as you viewers, as you guys know, Gary and I can very easily get distracted. And so this will help us stay focused moving forward. And so hopefully this will be a great time for you guys. And we have some more exciting things that we're going to be trying to doing with this channel. So hopefully you continue to stick with us and see all those things that we're doing. So now time to jump back in there and talk about the movie reviews. You've seen the description, you know what we're talking about. And so the first one that we're going to be talking about is this movie right here by the name of Artemis Fowl. Now this is a movie that is made by Disney, and it was supposed to come out in theaters, and it got pushed back. It's supposed to come out like in April, I think. It got pushed back to May 29th. And then from there, because of COVID and everything and theaters not being open, Disney decided just to release it on Disney Plus. Now, this was something that caused a lot of concern for some people, because normally with movies like this that they poured a lot of money into, they really wanted to focus on getting money back. So the fact that they went in and put it on Disney Plus had some people worried, because it was like, is this really not that good that they're just going to throw it on there? Or maybe they're just trying to get it in front of people. We don't really know. But this is a movie that is based on a book of the same name. Obviously, if you guys know Gary and I, you know how we feel about books. We just wait for the movie. And this is what we did. Waited for this. I actually saw this movie twice. I saw it when it came out last Friday. I reviewed it first just to see what it was about, what was going to be in there, because I knew from the trailer it had like mythical creatures and goblins and fairies and stuff. And I just want to make sure that there was nothing going to be too scary for my kids to watch, because this is a movie that is rated PG. It is marketed towards kids. It is marketed as a family movie. And so I just want to make sure that it wasn't too scary. I mean, my kids are still young. My eldest is only 8. So I want to make sure there wasn't anything going to be in there that's going to give them nightmares. And so I watched it once, and then I watched it again with them. So you kind of know that stuff like that was okay. So let's start off here with the good. So what is the good things about Artemis Fowl? Well, it's a couple of good things I thought. I thought the cast in it did a great job. The kid that plays Artemis Fowl, I thought he did a good job. I mean, like, again, he's supposed to be like, he's a 12-year-old. So I thought he did good. Colin Farrell in this, he did good as well. Josh Gad, who plays Olaf, he's in this. I thought he did a good job of what he did. Some of the things he kind of did I thought was kind of weird. We'll get to that in a second. But but he was fun in this movie, and I thought that there were some good and cool elements in this. I thought there was a lot of promise in this movie. There's a couple things that they touch on and that they're trying to set up that I thought was a cool idea, and I thought that it could actually be going somewhere. I thought the visuals in this and things like that were really cool. They have the guy, I never remember the actor's name. I see him from time to time. He knows martial arts. It's the big black dude. He's in a couple things. I think he was in like the Jack Reacher movie, and I think one of the Mission Impossibles. But he does a great job in this, like he does in most of his movies. And he's just this huge guy. His name is Dom, and his name is Butler. And they tell him, but you can call him Dom, you can call him Butler, you can call him Dominix or something like that, but you can never call him the Butler. If not, he will break you in half. That is literally one of the lines in there. And I thought it was good. And there were some moments in this movie where I did chuckle and laugh, and thought was pretty cool. Thought the visuals looked really good. Like when you're into like the fairy world and stuff, everything looks really nice. Just all that kind of stuff was really, really good. And I thought those things actually were like pretty fun, and it was just a setup for fun. And when I watched this movie, I was like, wow, this really is geared towards kids. This really is geared towards, having a good family movie. So I thought those things were actually pretty good about it. And those are some elements that I did enjoy. I thought some of the action scenes were pretty fun to watch as well. And they did some cool things with the camera, at least I thought. So I thought there were some fun elements, and I thought some of this stuff was actually, pretty good. So that's just some of the good there that I thought was good. So let's move on to the bad. Now, when we look at the bad, this isn't like there are bad things in it or like morally wrong or stuff like that. Just bad, like things I just didn't like. And with this movie, unfortunately, there were some bad things. One of them was I felt like this movie had like I said, there's a lot of interesting things that they touched on, but where they never really focused on one thing, it was kind of hard to like figure out. Like, what is this movie about? Is this movie about Artemis Fowl? Is it about this other fairy that's a cop and she's trying to redeem herself and her family name? Like, there's this whole story with that. Is this actually about Josh Gad? Because he ends up narrating half the movie. So it's like, wait, is this really about him? And you kind of see that he's narrating for a purpose at the end, but it was just kind of like, as you're watching, like, is this about him? Like, what's going on? Is this actually about Artemis Fowl's dad, who's played by Colin Farrell, who's also named Artemis Fowl? And so it was just kind of hard to like grasp like what was going on in this movie. I didn't really understand it. And then towards the end of the movie, just a one line, which if you've read the books, you know anything about it. I think it's in the trailer too. He says, "I'm Artemis Fowl. I'm a criminal mastermind." And at no point during this movie, I mean, they threw that phrase around, criminal mastermind, around quite a bit. But at no point did I ever really feel like he was a criminal mastermind. Like, obviously he's a genius and there's things that he did, but you didn't feel like he was being a criminal. They didn't really set that up well. So it was just kind of like, was this kind of a throwaway line for a possible sequel, or was I supposed to know that the whole time? So it was just kind of weird. And just kind of felt like this movie was all over the place. Like, you have this movie called Artemis Fowl, and you spend a good amount of time with it, but you spend a good amount of time also with this other fairy. And so stuff was just kind of weird. It just didn't seem to flow or mesh very well. And also, this movie's only like an hour and a half long, I think. And it almost felt like when the ending came, it kind of felt to me like it was like the second act where you had this big conflict, and then the hero fails, and then they have to overcome it to come to the final act. It kind of felt like that was happening, but then it just ended, and it was like, we're done. So it kind of felt like maybe the writers and the director were just kind of like, hey, we're kind of tired. We don't know how to wrap this up. Let's just wrap it up now, and it sounds good. So it was just a very abrupt ending that didn't feel like it got the justice that the story should have gotten. And again, where they set up so much stuff, it felt like this movie probably would have been better a little longer just to flesh out some of the stuff that was going on. But again, it's a kids movie, so you can't go too long because then kids get bored. So you can definitely see that, at least in my opinion, that they had a struggle with the story aspect of things on that end. So with that, those are some things that were kind of bad. That was just kind of like, I don't know if I can really jive from this. But moving on to the pastor portion of it. So looking at this from the lens of a pastor, as a Christian leader, someone that, again, it's hard for me to watch movies and not see maybe some spiritual, biblical elements that come out of a movie. And probably the biggest one that I saw that I really took away from this, I thought it was a good message, not like to Christians, but just to parents in general, is that Artemis Fowl, Colin Farrell, Artemis Fowl, he spends his life with his son, teaching him all about the fairy world and goblins and trolls and everything that is happening. He spends, every time he's with him, he's always teaching him something new and showing him different artifacts and writings and teachings and legends. He's constantly teaching it. And so as Artemis Fowl Jr. is growing up, he has all this ingrained in him. And even though he doesn't necessarily believe it until push comes to shove and something that happens, in the movie that gets him thrown into that world, he doesn't necessarily believe it, but he's listening and he's talking to his dad, and his dad is asking him questions and like quizzing him about the things like if you ever meet a fairy, don't look him in the eye, and Artemis Fowl Jr. has to respond and say, hey, yeah, here's what's happening, and just giving that to him. And this aspect was really cool because, we do see in scripture that we are told as parents that we are to pass down the words of God and the teachings of God, and we're supposed to, have scripture written on our walls and make sure and Solomon tells us that, if we raise the child up in God, they won't turn away from it. They will learn, just like Artemis Fowl, he didn't believe this until later when he had to believe it to help his father. It was there, and he was ready to act, and he was ready to fight for his dad and for the world in this case, and so again, I know that may sound kind of weird. You have to kind of see it, but but he was prepared for the battle that came. And so I just felt was like the biggest message from that side of things. It's like, yes, parents, be involved, teach your kids about God, teach them about the words of God and how we are to live, raise them up right. And, and this just showing, like, even in this movie, if you do that, your kids will be ready when the time comes. And so I thought that was a great takeaway from this movie. And I thought this is something that as I'm watching with kids, it was a good encouragement. Like, yes, like we may feel as parents that as we're teaching our kids and bringing them up that we're talking to a brick wall and they're not listening, and maybe they don't even care. But when the time comes, they will remember those teachings and they'll be able to step up. So I thought that was really cool about this movie, and I thought that was something that was really good and able to grasp from. So now from the dad perspective, like this is something that it is rated PG. So sometimes with PG kids movies, you never know what you're going to get. Like there's no like cursing in this movie. There's nothing remotely close to anything like sexual or anything like that. It is a pretty just solid like kids movie. Like if you're just one who you don't like your kids to watch about things about magic or fairies or goblins and stuff like that, like that is what you are and that's what you're teaching, that's totally fine. This is not the movie for you because it delves into all that stuff. It's not as deep as a Harry Potter, but you're in that world, you're dealing with magic and how to work around it. But that's about, if that's something that you don't want your kids to know about, then I would say, don't let them watch this movie. But if that's not one of your concerns, if you're teaching your kids that's just fun and fairy tale, like it's not a big deal. Like your kids can watch this and be okay. For me, like I had my 8 and 6 and 4-year-old, they all watched it. The 4-year-old I let watch, honestly, she probably shouldn't have been around, but I just stick popcorn and she gets entertained, and halfway through the movie she walks off anyways. But the other two, they watched it, like I said, nothing really scary or anything where they feel that they're going to have nightmares or they're afraid. So nothing like that happens in this movie. But, the kids were entertained. The kids loved it. I had talked to them and I said, hey, what'd you feel? Like, I want to know because I'm getting prepared for this review. And, they said, yeah, we liked it. It was fun. But my 8-year-old did say, and I thought this was interesting. My 8-year-old did say, she said, I thought it was really fun. I thought it was a lot of fun, but I just didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going on, which goes back to what I was saying about the bad. Like there was just so much going on. You didn't really know what the focus of this movie was. And my 8-year-old, she's smart for an 8-year-old, I guess. And she does like to dissect things and she's kind of a perfectionist. And, so she was kind of look like, wait, what is this about? Like she couldn't come back and tell you. And where she's been reading a lot and working on her reading comprehension, she's taken that into movies as well. And she's like, what's this movie about? I couldn't tell you, but other movies she could. So that was something that she, as a kid, she had fun with it, but she really didn't know what was going on. Your kids might feel the same way. So if your kid is different, if your kid has to know what's going on to stay engaged, it might be tough for them to stay engaged with this movie because it is hard to follow. But if your kids are just, hey, you just want something fun that they can throw in front of a screen and entertain them for an hour and a half, throw some popcorn in front of them, that most kids will probably be okay with this movie. So of course at this time now is, so what did I think? What did me, as an adult, as a pastor, as a father and such, like, what do I think of this movie? What do I rate it? What would I put it up there? So like I said, there are some good things. The pastor thing was really cool. I think there's a lot of cool elements in this movie, but there is some of those bad. So I kind of went back and forth, but I think ultimately I will have to give this movie 2 out of 5 Hail Marys. And so, 2, it's watchable. All right. Like it is a watchable movie. It's entertaining. You're looking to kill an hour and a half with the kids. You can do that. You can watch it. You can get some of the cool elements I talked about out of it. You can get some chuckles. It'll be okay, but it may not be something that you want to watch over and over again. Honestly, this is one that I'm personally glad I didn't have to spend the $20 to take my kids to the movie theater to see. Although some things probably would have been cool on the big screen, but on this one, it was like, man, I'm glad I was able to just watch it on Disney Plus with the kids. It entertained them. So like, again, it's watchable, it's passable, but it's really not the best movie. I think there was a lot of promise. I think there was a lot of things that it had going good for it. They just didn't deliver, and they didn't flesh it out, and they should have worked. They should have worked on that. But again, I don't know. I don't know what their goals were with this. Maybe if there is a sequel, I doubt there will. I don't know if this movie's doing very good on Disney Plus. I know other people didn't think it was that great. But if they do a sequel, maybe it'll flesh out some things. But this, as a standalone, it's passable. It's watchable. But it's really just probably not the best. And so that's kind of my thoughts there on Artemis Fowl. But I do want to move on to our second movie here. And this is a movie that flew under the radar and most people didn't really latch onto. And is this movie here called Harriet. This movie came out on November 1st. And so, of course, it's during this time where you're having more and more movies come out that are getting ready for the holiday season. And then usually movies like this will last through the holiday season, coming out in January and February. And then, of course, it gets just like Just Mercy, what we talked about. It gets lost out there in the it gets lost out there in the whole realm of COVID-19 and everything that's been happening in this world. But this is a movie that is based on the story of Harriet Tubman, and so it does. It's about 2 hours long. It's rated PG-13. So there is stuff in here that would be probably hard to watch if you're one that you don't necessarily want to see a lot of things or see certain things about slavery. But I personally think it's good to watch movies like this, just to remind us and to know the truth of what happened back then during the slaves. Because I'm a firm believer that if we do not remember history and know history, we're bound to repeat it. And we need to not be afraid of watching films like this. If anything, we need to embrace them and encourage it and also support it, because this is a part of our history. And if we don't like what's happening in the world today, we need to educate ourselves on what's happening. And what has happened as well. And so with this movie, with Harriet, what ends up being really cool about it is that they do just spend the time just showing you her backstory, who she is, and they do a good job of telling the history of her and the things that she did and what she did for slaves back then and how she helped them and saved them. And it's funny how this ends up starting. Her journey ends up starting, not only is she a slave, but it ends up starting because she gets married, but her husband is actually a free man, and she's trying to work through that. And then, there's something that happens that really gets the story going that ends up her fleeing for her life. And she flees, she goes to the north, she becomes free. But then after a year of living free, she says, I can't continue to live this way. I need to go back. And then we start seeing how she gets integrated into the Underground Railroad and how she begins to help and just frees slave after slave. And I think all in all, at the end of the movie, it tells us like over 700 slaves were saved because of her and because of her efforts. And she has some big accomplishments where she ends up being one of the only women, black women, much less a woman, who ends up leading a troop and an army. I forget that technical term, but just the incredible story of this woman and what she did. So just continuing that talk and with the good of this, I mean, this not only does it not shy away, in my opinion, from what happened to the slaves. Like, you do see how they're treated, like nothing in an explicit gory detail, but you do see it. The movie doesn't shy away with what happened to these slaves, how they were treated. I mean, the movie just shows you what life was like for them at this time. And so I always appreciate a movie like this, that it may not be a documentary type, but they make a good movie, but tell the history, and they don't shy away from the good or the bad or the ugly about it. They just show it and say, here's what happened. So I thought that did really well. I thought the cast in this did phenomenal. Everybody in this, I thought, did a great job portraying their role. And honestly, sometimes I just wonder like how hard it must have been for those who are white in this movie, portraying the white slave owners. Like I just wonder like how much they would have to struggle to do that and to use the N-word to these actors that they are working with and they respect. But, to be able to even get past that, to be able to portray this movie properly. And even the, like those who played Harriet and stuff, those who played the black characters, like having to sit there and even take that. Like, I'm sure that whole thing had to be difficult, but they continued to do that and to deliver a great performance, to really make you get lost into this story and into just really like, man, what's happening next? How does Harry get out of this? Like, how is she going to save all these people? Like, tell me more. You really get sucked into it. So I thought that was really good. The bad for this movie. Honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of bad for me. Probably the main thing is kind of like in Just Mercy, is that for the sake of the movie, you have to tell the story, right? You have to be able to keep the narrative moving. So there are some liberties that they took in this to help the narrative to keep going. And there's even something at the end that kind of bothered me, that I was just like, me and my wife are just like, well, that was added just to have a good movie and a satisfying ending. So there were some certain things like that kind of took me out of it, but it wasn't enough to where it was like I was completely out and I couldn't get back into the movie. Like when these certain elements happen, like there's certain things about when she's talking about God speaking to her and stuff that was kind of like, okay, is this real, or is this the movie magic? And it kind of takes you out for a second, but you're able to get right back in, and it's not that hard to get back in and get sucked back into this movie. But honestly, that's about the only like bad thing I can really say about this movie. Like I said, it takes you out a little bit, but you're still able to jump right back into this movie. So moving on to the pastor perspective of Harriet. This, I thought, it is just riddled with it. Like, Harriet does not shy away from her faith in God in this movie. And this is most likely because this is exactly how she was at the time. And she felt that God like told her, hey, now is the time for you to run. And she runs. And she runs for her life. She gets free. And like I said, after she is free for a year, she says, I can't be the only one that has been set free from slavery. Now, as a Christian, as a pastor, like that already just screams like, wow, this is even just a great depiction of the gospel. Like, God has saved me, so there's no reason why like I can keep this freedom to myself. I have to go help save other slaves. And so we look at it, we're told we're slaves to sin, and so we are freed from that. Harriet at the same time is like, I have to free other people. And so she goes back and she actually gets discouraged from this, because it's like, listen, the way you got away from this, the way you survived is a miracle in of itself. Just take your miracle and enjoy your life. Like, that's what she's told. But she says, I can't. There are other people. I have friends. I have family. There are other people that need what I have. So she goes back, even though everyone tells her not to. She goes back, and you just see her she goes back initially for her husband. That doesn't work out. She thought that's why she needed to be there, but she ends up bringing up other family members and other friends. And she says this line, which I thought was great. And she says, I thought I went back for my husband, but God had other plans. I actually came back for all of you. So let's go. And just her being open to what God is leading her to do. And even though she may have had a plan, she may have had her purpose and what she thought God wanted her to do, when God showed her what she actually wanted her to do, she was able to say, okay, God, let's do this. And that's what fueled her. She said, I know God has put me on this earth to continue to do this. God freed me so I can continue to free others. And I just thought, from the past perspective, this whole thing is just absolutely just phenomenal, and how this woman allowed God to lead her, and she was able to lead others to freedom, and then even just rally others around her cause and be a part of the Underground Railroad. And then to the point where she's called Moses, because she is setting her people free. And so, and she takes it, and she owns that she's like, yes, I am Moses. Yeah. Like she's like, yeah, like, this may be hard, but I am Moses. I am setting my people free. And it's just super powerful what she has done and how she let God uses her life. So that from this movie is just so easy to take from it. And it's just really great to be able to see that. And again, a movie not shy away from that side of it. Sometimes movies might shy away from the spiritual or the God side of things, but it doesn't. And it puts it right front and center that this is what's driving Harriet, and she's going to do it. And I think it is just absolutely phenomenal. So also now, lastly, from the dad perspective, like I said earlier, this movie is PG-13. All right, so I would definitely stick to this PG-13 rating. Probably, your kids, maybe if they're already in middle school, and they're maybe 11 or 12, you may know them best, but understand they do cuss in this, or cussing at slaves, back and forth. They do use the N-word, again, because like I said, they don't shy away from history. they want people to know exactly what happens. You see the scars on slaves from when they were beaten. You do see one woman get beaten to death. Again, not explicitly, not like, graphic or horror, like that kind of stuff, but you do see it, and a woman gets beaten to death. So there are things are in this that are probably really hard to see, especially for a younger audience. But if you stick around to that 13 age range, like these are things that I think that they should already know about. And if you expose them to it, it doesn't expose it in an explicit, horrid way. It exposes enough for you to know what happens and to see it and to be like, man, I can't believe this is how people lived. Again, it doesn't glorify it in any way. It doesn't say this is great what happened. It's showing it to you in a way of we need to feel, empathy and sympathize with what happened and make sure that we're not going to allow these kinds of things to happen in our country again. So from that perspective, like just really know your kids. Like this is something that I will show my girls later on in life to say like, listen, here's what happened in our history, and there are still people out there who think this way. Like we all need to make sure that we're not, feeding into that kind of mentality. And I want them to know this. And this is one thing that like I haven't seen like on the Black Lives Matter stuff on Amazon and things like that for people to watch. But I think it definitely should be out there because we need to know the history. You need to know that what happened. And we need to know about these heroes like Harriet Tubman, who freed slaves and what she did. And not only just a great hero, but also a great black hero, a great black female hero. Like these are the kind of stories that we need to see, we need to be talking about, and we need to be telling people. So everyone coming up, the next generation, us, we can see that what great things can be done. And then from a Christian perspective, what great things God can do through people if we let him. And this is just the story of this amazing woman and what she did. And let me tell you, this is something that, listen, like, go watch this movie. It's $6 on Amazon, maybe the same in other areas. Totally worth it. Watch it. It's about a little over 2 hours. Totally worth everything. Totally worth that time. I wish I would have seen the theater to give it more support. This movie was great. So this is a movie that I will rate 4 out of 5 Hail Marys. Like I said, there were certain aspects that it kind of took me out that kept me from putting it in that 5. Like this is a masterpiece, but this is a really, really great movie and a really great movie that everyone should be seeing and should be talking about. I feel like this isn't getting the respect that it deserves, kind of, because a lot of people don't know about it. But hopefully now you do, and you will see it, and you will continue to spread the news about how awesome this movie is. And the same line is like Just Mercy. Like these are great movies that are telling us the truth and just showing us things that are out there. So hopefully you can check this out. Check out Harriet. 4 out of 5 Hail Marys. Totally worth the watch. Go watch it if you can. Like I said, rent it, Amazon, Vudu, wherever streaming service you have. Go check that out. Go watch Harriet. So that is all I have for the reviews. I hope these reviews were helpful. I hope you enjoyed this time with me. Thank you so much for being with me. And even if you're checking out the views later, thank you for that. What are your thoughts? Have you seen these movies? Have you not? Leave a comment. We would love to interact with you guys and talk with you guys. And then also, in a few hours, we have some movie news, and Gary will actually be on with me. So in a few hours, we will be back on, and we will be able to give you some exciting movie news that is happening. And then we will also be telling you our subject for Monday. And so make sure to check us out here in a few hours as well. Check out this video. Let us know in the comments. Subscribe. Turn on the bell so you don't miss out on a single thing. Thank you guys so much for being with me, and I will see you guys soon.